Hello and welcome. I am Tiberius, and today I'm continuing my interview series about getting into cybersecurity. I'm joined by Kim Cote, a cybersecurity auditor at Google with a truly unconventional path into the industry. Kim started her career in music education, transitioned into software testing, and eventually self-taught her way into security. She's now an active voice in the community, having spoken at events like B-Sides Portland and B-Sides Chicago, as well as volunteering at DEF CON. Kim, welcome to my channel, and thank you for being here to share your knowledge and experiences with us.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So, you originally studied music and communications, getting into software testing before eventually becoming a cybersecurity auditor at Google. What sparked your interest in cybersecurity, and how did you navigate such an unconventional career path into the field?
Honestly, growing up, I never saw myself as someone who would interact with technology long term. That was not the message that was provided to me by the world around me. And I can remember many instances where I was pushed away from technology actively. I also have some varying levels of neurospiciness and did not succeed academically, as I feel like many in this industry kind of went through similar struggles with academia. And so I assumed everyone that was in technology was incredibly intelligent, straight A students, and just didn't see myself doing anything involving technology, even though I really enjoyed video games, really enjoyed sci-fi, really enjoyed the technical aspects of sci-fi, but didn't see myself filling that role. So I went to school for the arts and studied music education. Didn't enjoy it. Also failed out of the music conservatory halfway through. So I had to choose a different major. Selected a major I knew I could finish in 2 years, so communications. And then once I got out of school, I had a pretty low GPA and I needed to take whatever job would have me, which happened to be employee number 13 at an itty-bitty startup, and was doing technical support, customer service type role. And I was talking to you about this earlier, but wearing many different hats. So I got to see a lot of different pieces of a tech company. And I was working with the customers and really started enjoying the technical process. Because we were a startup, we had so little documentation internally. And if there was an issue, you had to figure it out through trial and error and kind of test your way through it. And I liked that part of the job so much that I went a little deeper into the company and began first in a more technical support role where I was the go-between between our customers and our engineering department to report any bugs that we were finding. And I was the first person in that department at that company. And then I moved into software testing, which was, I feel like, a big shift in my career. And at that point, it was the first time I really loved what I was doing. Like, I felt that feeling of, oh my goodness, I love going to work in the morning and I'm having so much fun. And I felt like I'd found my people. And once I learned how to code, I kind of had a few different options within the company. One was pursuing an SDET path. I'd also started listening to Darknet Diaries and got really into it and really excited. And we had like DevSecOps, but we didn't have a security testing team at all. We just had software testing and we wrote automation, and we had security checks in our automation, especially our API automation. Like, we were always checking for authentication, no auth, that type of thing. But we weren't pen testing at all. And so I was listening to Darknet Diaries and I thought, like, maybe I can do some of this, like try some of this out, because I have full access to this system and I can do a lot of different testing. So I taught myself how to do like very, very basic exploits like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, which if anyone is like fully new to cybersecurity, you can script kiddie cross-site scripting. And that's not something I knew. Like, it's so easy to do like a basic cross-site scripting exploit. And fortunately,
I'm aware.
my system that I was working on had a lot of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. I also knew this because I'd been working in it like 3 or 4 years at this point. I knew the software so well that I knew where the older parts of the system were, which also if you're testing something and you know the software well, like, go to the areas that no one touches. Like, go to the rooms no one ever goes in, because that's where you're going to find the mess and the skeletons. But started finding a lot of vulnerabilities and found enough that I was granted like budget for Burp Suite, and then taught myself how to use Burp, started setting up quarterly scans, running them, learning so much more after I started running the scans, because obviously Burp would discover something. I think there was what is it called? Oh, HTTP smuggling. I like distinctly
Ah,
remember
nice.
that was found, and I just like gave it off to the DevSecOps team and was like, hey, they found this. And they didn't know what it was, or I wasn't communicating it properly. And so I had to dig into it and learn how to actually execute the exploit, like reproduce it. And it was cool to be able to manage that and learn like all these different exploits just from kind of more of a software startup, like a smaller company that still has vulnerabilities. Whereas at Google, I feel like there are not that many vulnerabilities. And also, we have such good vulnerability rewards programs. Like, I'm probably not going to find the stuff that like experienced hackers are going to be finding and getting, $250,000 payouts. But it was very fun to do that at a smaller company.
That's awesome.
Oh, and then I forgot to talk about how I got to where I am now, which is cybersecurity auditing. So once I'd started doing that, I felt kind of sure of who I was and who I was in the industry and where I wanted to be. And I started putting myself out there in the community, highly recommend. And I like wrote a book with other software testers, and it's called Testing Stories. It was really fun. And then I made friends from that, which led to my first speaking engagement at a virtual conference. And then started giving talks internally at my company about security and talks for both like software testers and software engineers on how to make our system more secure. From there, once I started putting myself out there in the world kind of and talking about the things that I loved, I was recruited to Google. Google was looking for auditors that had technical expertise, that had code readability and could write basic SQL. And they recruited from software testers, they recruited from DevSecOps, they recruited from a few other things like security consultants. And just so that they had people with a little more technical expertise. I really think it was they just wanted people who had experience engaging with engineers, because a lot of my job now is discussing complex systems with engineers. And I started working as a technical auditor at Google, which was a big mental shift for me because I loved software testing so much. And I built a lot of my identity around being a software test engineer, and going to like software test engineer to auditor was tough for me mentally and took a while to kind of like wrap my head around and remember that. And I think the security community is so good at this, but your job title is not who you are. And once I'd kind of like come to terms with what I was doing, like my job title changing, I started to enjoy the work that I was doing. So I was recruited onto the technical infrastructure and cloud team. So I audited mostly data centers and Google Cloud. And then I worked on that team for about 3 years and really enjoyed it, but always like I was still itching for security. I had gotten bit by the bug and I wanted to do more. And so I moved over to the cybersecurity team about a year ago now and have loved being there, because I went from auditing like data centers to auditing security teams. And now it's like I get to interact with the subject matter that excites me the most.
Awesome. That's an amazing career path, to be honest. So yeah, really cool. With the musical background, you must be quite creative, I would say. Do you think that your creativity helps you solve problems you face at work?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that, because at Google, and I think at a lot of the larger tech companies, there's so many creatives that are in technical roles. Like I've met so many musicians, like Kat Fitzgerald, for example. She runs Chicago B-Sides, and she is an incredible musician. And a lot of the people I was in a band at Google Chicago with the Pixel team, the Pixel hardware defense team. They were all in a band. And if they had like a team problem, they go to Google has music rooms in all of its offices, and they'll go to the music room and literally jam it out and just play together. Yes, I think it helps. The creativity obviously helps with security and being able to take different paths. So having like mental fungibility is definitely helpful, because if you get stuck on certain paths, you're not going to be able to find as much as you should.
So many people think you obviously need a tech degree or certs to get into cybersecurity. You proved otherwise, coming from a liberal arts background, no initial certs. What advice do you have for others from non-technical fields who want to make that similar transition?
So I'll caveat by saying, if I could go back to college, I would take computer science courses, just because it would give you such a better head start. There are still things like basic things that I feel I struggle to understand because I never had that like base layer of understanding and knowledge. I kind of learned, I learned how to code before I fully understood how an operating system worked. And I would like to go back and redo it and take more computer science classes. So that's advice to anyone, throw a couple computer science classes in there. I was recently at the Portland Hackerspace, and I was there with a friend, and I was talking to someone else about setting up hardware and tinkering with little tiny computers like Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, etc., setting up some infrared sensors and how to code those, what tech stack to use, etc. And my friend was listening to me, and I was asking incessant questions just about pretty much every other word. I would have to stop him and say, "Can you explain what that is? Can you explain what that is?" And afterwards she said, "It's fascinating listening to you talk to people because you're not afraid of seeming like you don't know what you're talking about." And unlike other industries in cybersecurity, I think your curiosity is worth more than your knowledge, depending on where you are. But for entry level, if you are passionate and curious and are good at communicating, then you will go far. Just if you keep pressing into what interests you most, you can go pretty far. And just when you have questions about things, stop and ask people. And managers will see your genuine interest in something, and they will help you get there.
I totally agree. I've said this before, that if you don't know the answer to a technical question in an interview, firstly, it's okay to say you don't know. But also, if you follow that up with, the interviewer might say, "Okay, well, we'll move on." But if you interrupt them and say, "Well, could you tell me the answer so I can go learn about it?" That is, as an interviewer, I've done interviews before. That's amazing. It's especially amazing if you decide to do a follow-up interview and they come back and the first thing they said is, "I looked up that thing."
Yeah.
And I learned all this stuff about it. It's really amazing. That, honestly, it does go so far because it shows the passion. And that's honestly what a lot of interviewers in cybersecurity, especially for pen testing stuff, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that passion a lot of the time. So definitely agree there.
I have gone through some security engineering interviews at Google and not succeeded. And I did exactly what you said afterwards. I talked to some of my mock interviewers and I said, "Hey, that thing I couldn't figure out, I figured it out. Here it is." And every interviewer that I had, I contacted them afterwards and they said, "I would be happy to help you learn this, work through this, etc." Taking people up on that, even though I know nothing and think I don't deserve to be in this place. But if you express interest, like you've said, and kind of do a little bit of research on your own and say "Hey, I figured it out. Can we talk about it?" People are more than willing to help you and jump on board with you.
Yeah, it is honestly one of my top tips to help people. Just don't be afraid to say no, because nobody knows everything. That's the thing. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, actually, that you'd co-authored a software testing book or software stories, right? And you also started a blog during your career. How did writing and sharing your knowledge impact your professional growth and opportunities?
Oh, that's such a good question because it helped in a lot of ways. Writing the book with others, the biggest thing that came out of it was community. I got a mentor out of the process. I got friends out of the process. And I also I used to have a lot of insecurity around my lack of technical knowledge. And so I wrote not on technical knowledge, but on the importance of vulnerability in a workplace. So many people commented that it was exactly what they needed to hear. And they were really appreciative that I had written about it. And I ended up talking about it as well. And it was a good reminder that in tech, we don't just need technical skills. We also need, I don't want to say soft skills, but we also need emotional intelligence. And if you have that, you are of value, even if your technical depth isn't as much as others. So that was one thing that was very encouraging that came out of the book. And then writing the blog helped me develop, or it helped me be less afraid of who I am and my personality. And the same thing, I was exposing that I wasn't as technically knowledgeable, and it wasn't making people run away from me. It was pulling people in and allowing them to get to know me better. I also give this advice to anyone I mentor, which is get as much of your personality online as possible, in a blog or tweeting, Instagram, what have you. If you can show people who you are, especially who your work persona is, then the opportunities that are best for you will be drawn to you. Fixing my LinkedIn up and having the website and having the blog, I think that's what got me recruited from Google, because a recruiter noticed and thought that person has the type of personality that we're looking for this specific team. And it was like such a good match for me. So if you can get who you are out there, then you'll have a much better chance of finding the team that best suits you.
Yeah, I would obviously, maybe slightly biased in this area, but I would add YouTube and perhaps Twitch as well. If you can record yourself or stream yourself doing, or even just learning cybersecurity, that can definitely go a long way, because you are literally putting yourself out there on camera, teaching and learning. I would say it's definitely a bit more daunting than just writing a blog post, but I definitely recommend it. I know several people who got into cybersecurity and they literally started out streaming their learning process on Twitch. So I feel like that's a decent way of going about it.
Yeah, that's kind of how Trash Puppy got started, right?
Exactly how Trash Puppy got started, yeah. She actually was the first person I interviewed in this entire series. So yeah, she is now a full-time penetration tester. She got an internship from that, basically streaming, got noticed by somebody, got an internship, passed the internship, and now works full-time. So it's awesome.
That's such a cool update, because I watched that one and I wondered how it was going after the internship.
Yeah, she's now a full-time pen tester, which is amazing. So you've emphasized how important networking was for your career, but you also told me that you should only really network with people you get along with. What are your tips for authentic networking in the cybersecurity community, especially for someone who might be new or coming from a different industry?
So my first DEF CON was last year, and I felt very overwhelmed and excited to be there, but also that feeling of, I don't deserve to be here. Like, these people are so cool. And the first couple days, I just felt nervous and afraid to talk to people, afraid to engage. And then finally, I just decided to kind of be myself and talk about the things I like. Like, I love D&D, and I started giving out, like, I had a bunch of D&D dice because I was supposed to run a kind of like one-shot tabletop for Zero G. We were doing, Zero G is Google's like side parallel event for DEF CON, and I was like volunteering to run some like tabletop over there, which nobody wanted to play. It was a good experience of rejection, but I had a ton of dice left over, and so I just started giving them out to people, and I made so many friends by talking about the things that I liked. And it's such a dumb thing to say, but like, just being yourself really does help. And I've talked about this, but I've given talks about this before. Like, there's kind of two categories I put people in when I'm networking. I have like the people that will help you in your career, and the people that you just really enjoy that are in your space. So there are people that I've networked with, especially like at my own company, that will help me with my career. And I may not click with them super well, but I'm going to maintain that relationship. I'm going to follow up with them afterwards, and I'm going to try to find connection points, because that may end up helping me down the line, or I may have an audit with them at some point in the future and need to work with them or partner with them. So I have like that set of networking that I do. And then the other people are people that I just really enjoy their personality. Like Tiberius, you're an example of someone where I just was like, he's so much fun. I want to be friends. And we'll try to find things that we have in common so that I can like keep talking to that person and keep seeing that person. And I've met so many people at conferences. Like, I gave you a bracelet and then found out you like Star Trek from sharing bracelets with you. And I love like bringing bracelets that are things that I'm interested in. So I always have a ton of, I don't have them on me, but I'll always have a ton of like D&D themed bracelets and Star Trek themed bracelets, and just like little, I think it was Trash Puppy that said, or no, there's someone that you interviewed that said, bring a piece of yourself.
It was Trash Puppy. Yeah, okay. It was for the DEF CON top tips video. Yeah, exactly.
And if you are a nervous or shy person, which I am, having something that you're interested in and can show someone and then they can engage with you, that makes it a little bit easier. And then you have something to talk about.
I remember the bracelet. I believe it, I'll have to correct myself if I'm wrong, but I believe it said to boldly go on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gave it to me at B-Side Chicago. It was very sweet. Thank you. It's amazing. And it is. It's always nice to pick up these things that people bring. Like, I mean, at DEF CON, it's mostly stickers. But I feel like that's sticker life at DEF CON. So I always bring a ton of stickers and like giving them to people. And that's what I do. But yeah, friendship bracelets are another thing. I honestly hadn't thought of D&D dice, but it makes total sense. Yeah. So D&D dice for sure would be another one.
Yeah. And most people that are drawn to security, I swear there's like a certain personality, and we're all at DEF CON. But sometimes you'll meet someone and you do not jive with them, and that's okay. And you don't have to maintain that relationship, especially if it's not, someone you will directly interact with at work later. So the people that I really get along with, I maintain the connection, like connect with them on Signal if you have shared interests. And the people that you don't get along with, it's okay to just let that go. You'll find someone that has shared interests or similar interests with you that you enjoy connecting with.
Yeah, I mean, the community's huge. DEF CON is definitely the biggest convention. There's like 30,000 people or so. But that's a fraction of the community anyway. There are so many groups and Discords as well. Like, Discord is a really good place. There are so many cybersecurity Discords, and you'll find people there and chat to them and get to know them, and they'll invite you to their little private sort of Discord server that they have with their friends. That's how the group that I mostly associate with, OnlyFeet, that's how they started. Like, literally, it was just a group of friends from streamers community that decided to form a group. And yeah, it's now like, I think there's like 1,000 people in that Discord server now. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it's a super fun community. We do CTFs all the time and everything. And, we actually went to Rome, like 9 of us went to Rome on vacation one year. It was like, it's those kind of people, like they bleed into your real life. That's really the nice thing about cybersecurity, I think, is you just have all these people and they just become really good friends.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's nice here.
It's very nice. I like it. I'm going to stay.
I'll stay.
I hope so. So, for those who don't know, what does a cybersecurity auditor actually do, especially in a company as large and complex as Google? Could you give us a glimpse into your role and day-to-day work?
Yes, absolutely. So it's broad. So I didn't come from an audit background. Typically, an auditor will go to, we call it like a big four kind of consulting company, and you'll learn how to audit from that perspective, learn how to do external audit, learn how to do internal audit, and then you'll move into like a private company like Google. I came with no audit experience and was trained in Google's audit department. So it's like what I do is very, very niche because it is for a large company, and there's only like 4 of us on the team. So we're small but mighty. So I'll like briefly explain the structure of where my team sits as well, because there are like a lot of different audit functions. There are a lot of different compliance functions. But for a company that's large, you'll typically have an internal audit department that's responsible for ensuring like risk is appropriately being mitigated across the company. And then we specifically at Google report up to the internal audit committee that sits on the board. So it's kind of like an independent internal third party that is making sure that nothing shady is going on. There are also external auditors, which like our data centers are constantly hit by external auditors, but that's a truly independent third party making sure that there's nothing awry. But the internal audit is like the first, we make sure that everything is set before external auditors get there kind of thing. And we have a lot of different pillars within our internal audit team. Some are over specific product areas. Like we have a YouTube payments and devices team that kind of looks at everything there. We have another vertical that is technical infrastructure and cloud, and that's the team I used to be on. I did a lot of physical security audits there, which was fun, and that's usually what I give talks on now is like the intersection between the physical security and the cybersecurity, because like it's just cool to audit physical security at data centers is so intense. Like it is so overboard what it needs to be, but it's fun. It's like almost like being in a spy movie. Like I get to have my irises scanned when I go to work, and that feels fun. And then cybersecurity is, and we have like a privacy audit team too, and we're horizontal. So we look at every product area across Google. We're looking at how well is cybersecurity being managed across all of Google. That is obviously a big task. And so our audits depend. We have a framework that we look at, and we kind of see like what are the highest risk areas and where should we target our next audit? Like what should we do next? And most of the audits I work on right now are privileged and confidential. Some of them are attorney-client privilege as well. So I have to figure out how I can phrase what I look at. But a lot of times it's looking at a specific PA and how well the security is functioning. Sometimes we're looking at vulnerability remediation and validating that we are remediating our vulnerabilities as we should be in accordance with policy. Sometimes I've looked at physical security on this team as well. Like if we have a thing that is sensitive, how well are we physically and logically protecting that data? And the way we test that really varies. So that's the broad structure. And then day to day, what we do, audits have 3 phases. They have a planning phase, a fieldwork phase, and then a reporting phase. And in the planning phase, it's just trying to understand the product itself. Because a lot of times we haven't audited it before. We've never looked at it before. I've done a DeepMind audit and knew nothing about DeepMind and had never seen the systems that are in use, not really had an understanding of what the models were that they were using, what training data, et cetera. So the planning phase is really getting to understand that, talking to teams, learning about their processes. And then the field work stage. In that planning phase, we'll identify different processes. And when we create kind of a process map, this is fun. It's kind of like threat modeling. So an example that I can talk about is one that I did with physical security. So it's how does someone get legitimate access to a data center? And we'll map it out. First it goes through this system and then it gets approved by this person. And then it gets automatically updated in this system and then access is provisioned. And so we'll look at that. We'll map out the process and then we'll identify along that process everything that can go wrong. So we'll call those risks. And we identify the risks and then we look for the things that are mitigating the risks, which in audit we call controls. I think in security, some people use the control language as well, but I know it's not consistent across every company, and especially smaller companies that may not have a compliance function. So we look at the controls themselves, or if there's a control gap, there's nothing stopping this issue or this risk from happening. An example of a risk might be someone gets access that hasn't been appropriately approved, or the wrong approver has access to approve things in the system, and then what are the various things that stop that from happening? And then we'll test the controls, which is the boring part. A lot of the time it's, okay, you said it works this way. I'm going to take an example access provisioning. You say it works this way and it needs this approval. Give me a sample of all the people that have been provisioned access. And I'm going to validate that they have had the approval and that it has been recorded. So that's the more boring part of the job. But it just provides assurance. Either your process is working, or if we find a lot of issues or errors, we'll say your process isn't working and you need to fix it.
The final part honestly sounds a lot like, in a way, security testing, the kind of stuff I do in pen testing. So that's honestly the more fun part for me. But I guess I'm more approaching it from a really super malicious way, rather than just checking if the control isn't really working. So yeah, no, it seems quite similar.
If there is a control gap, so there isn't an actual control there, that's where it can get really fun. There was a control gap on our core team, core systems. And one thing that's really fascinating about auditing at Google is a thing that we're considering is most companies are looking at what's the financial impact, what's the regulatory impact of if this thing goes wrong, what is the consequence we face? At a large company, you also have to look at reputational impact because the news cycle can be pretty vicious and can have resulting financial impacts. So sometimes we have to measure what the reputational impact will be of XYZ thing going wrong. And that you can get really creative with what will this do to public opinion? And I think one team did a thing where they queried, because we have access to all of the search data. And so they used our internal data and looked at how many stories came up about a specific incident that had happened previously to show what the reputational impact would be if a negative event occurred. So that was cool, the creativity used there.
Nice. And yeah, the reputational damage is something I've often talked about, because a lot of, especially junior testers, will just phrase everything in terms of the actual tech, the outcome in terms of what actually is happening. And often that might not be that bad from a technical perspective, but if you actually look at the overall company reputation, the potential for data loss could be ridiculous. So Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a super important thing in auditing and pen testing, apparently. So yeah.
I learned that so much in audit because the lines we draw in our brains, especially as like security-minded people, you see a cross-site scripting vulnerability and you know exactly the like implication of that. Like I think about that sweet little grandma that's opening up her computer and booking a tennis court, and all of a sudden she's redirected to a malicious site and like she's hacked. You know what I mean? But people don't put those things together, especially non-technical roles. It's not their job to worry about security. They don't think about the outcome because it's not their job. So you have to very explicitly explain to them, if X happens, then Y happens, and then Z happens, and give them the full story of what's happening. And I remember I had a manager that I showed him I had a cross-site scripting vuln, and he said, okay, but you need to take a video and you need to do a redirect to show the full story of what's going to happen here, because just showing that like an error pop up won't actually get people to resolve the issue.
Yeah, that's true as well, for sure. What do you enjoy most about cybersecurity auditing?
So I think the best part is talking to all the people, specifically at Google, because you get to talk to so many different product areas and so many different functions. Like 1 month, I'll be talking to a director of physical security about our physical security systems and how we protect like Googlers from potentially malicious outsiders. The next week, I'll be talking to someone about like how do we appropriately secure our like software supply chain and make sure that we're not importing any malicious libraries or packages. And then the next week, I'm talking to someone who does red teaming internally and like all of the different findings they have and what they think the biggest risks are. So it's like, I get to talk to these people that are doing these really, really cool things. And that's my job, is to just talk, like literally pick their brains about what they think the problem areas are with various areas of Google. But the best part is, yeah, being able to like talk to everyone and see all of the different puzzle pieces and how they interact, which when you're just doing one thing, like we have a team that is solely responsible for vulnerability scanning. And it's like they do vulnerability scanning day in, day out. That's all they do, which is fun and wonderful. And you get to see a lot of different vulns for a lot of different systems. But you don't get like the variety that you do when you're in audit.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, not only do you meet a bunch of different people, you meet a bunch of different people at Google.
Yeah.
So you already know Google honestly hires the best of the best. So yeah, that's an insane amount of talent that you get to meet.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Some of us sneak through.
Nonsense. I include you in that statement. Best of the best.
It's really cool. And one of the things that is kind of a Google thing is hiring for kindness and humility as well. Anytime I meet someone interesting or I'll be watching something where a Googler speaks, pretty much everyone is willing to have a one-on-one and chat, like anyone internally. I have a friend who regularly meets with Vince Cerf. She just pinged him one day and said, hey, do you want to meet? And he said, yeah. Some of the other big names will also do the same thing. I've had multiple different meetings with various managers of different departments. Anytime I audit someone and I think they're cool, I will say, hey, can we talk again? And everyone is so kind and patient and always willing to meet up. I recently was in Seattle and I met with one of my previous stakeholders from an audit, and we just wandered around her neighborhood and picked cherries from her cherry tree. It was so much fun. She does incredible things. She like manages our third-party directories. So it's wild that I get to like hang out with those people and be friends with them.
For anyone interested in following in your footsteps, what skills would you suggest they focus on to become a successful cybersecurity auditor?
It varies because at Google, they care, at maybe larger companies too. I can only speak from my experience there because I haven't worked elsewhere, but SQL is incredibly important for auditors. Curiosity is also important anytime you're dealing with cybersecurity because, you know, it's always shifting and changing. You can't really rely on the textbook knowledge that you learned 5 years ago to still be relevant today. You have to be a person who's genuinely interested in learning about every new change and every new issue that's coming out, like every new vuln. Also, I think coding is a little bit important. It will help you get the role. And sometimes we do have to do code reviews. So it's beneficial if you know it, even though it's not really a skill that I use on the job regularly. I try to keep it fresh with leak code, but it's not something that we really need to use, but it will help you land a role. And yeah, SQL is very important. And then auditors, it always helps to have CISA. If you want to stay in audit, that's a good certification to get. If you want to be kind of like a jack of all trades security, I would say CISP is the one that's fairly well respected. Although I have heard from security engineering people at Google when I talked about pursuing CISP say, oh man, we really make fun of anyone who has that. So,
I think that's an industry-wide thing, to be fair.
yeah, in audit, CISP is like very well respected, but outside of audit, you may be made fun of. I thought of one more thing, which is audit is in its nature confrontational, like highly confrontational. So being able to handle confrontation well and not being afraid of asking really difficult questions without guiding the person is a beneficial skill as well.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
I'm sure that applies to security engineering as well.
Yeah, honestly, it does apply for pen testing as well, but especially like web app pen testing.
Yeah.
I imagine it must apply for like internals, but like I can speak for web apps and mostly just dealing with developers who are personally upset that you found vulnerabilities in their app. Even though you are on the same side as them, right? You're trying, the ultimate thing is that they want to code a secure app. You want their app to be secure. But I feel like a lot, well, I wouldn't say a lot, some developers definitely take things a little bit too personally. Their ego gets a little hurt when you tell them, oh, you coded this a little bit wrong.
Well, it's their baby. They hand you their precious baby that they've spent like months creating, and you say, this baby's ugly, and hand it back to them. And they might have thoughts and feelings, and having resiliency to realize it's not you, it's just the job, that will take you very far.
Yeah. Everyone makes mistakes, is what I say. Pen testers make mistakes, developers make mistakes. It's all good as long as the goal is the same. That's what's important. At the end of everything, the app is more secure than it started out. So I feel like that's really the takeaway they have to get. In some companies, auditors are seen as compliance enforcers, while engineers are seen as builders. How can teams reshape that dynamic to become more collaborative?
Yeah, and this is, I mentioned to you earlier, something that I'll sometimes hear at the end of talks. Like, why do you have people who know nothing about the process area auditing me and telling me what to do? And it's been fascinating because I've seen both sides of it. Like, I worked software development lifecycle as a software tester, and now I worked on the more compliance side. And I remember being shocked when I first came into audit because the language that auditors use and that the process owners use is so different. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like cron script is known as it's like a completely different name in audit. And we have just very different language that we use to talk about things. And we have different priorities. Like we're looking out for the interest of the business, and we see things differently than a team on the ground would. And we think about risk differently. I think the biggest issues I've encountered are just communication issues, and that we don't have the same vocabulary for certain things, and that can cause a lot of tension. And so whatever side you're on, just taking extra time to communicate and make sure that you're understanding things the same way will make the process go a lot smoother. So for someone who is potentially being audited, I'm going to give advice that I've heard other stakeholders tell me was the advice that they received when talking to an auditor. Give them exactly what they ask for and nothing more.
I've heard that one.
Yeah. And it's true. But I would also say clarify what they're asking for, because you may be thinking of things differently. And then also there's a certain point in an audit right before reporting when we're confirming our findings and validating like, hey, we saw that this area had a weakness and here are the examples. And what do you think? Essentially, like, can you validate that this is an issue? And you should speak up if you feel like there's an issue with the finding or if the risks aren't being highlighted properly, because we don't know your process area. We are in and out in 6 to 9 months. And some audit teams, it's like 3 months. So like I will audit like data center physical security for 6 months. And then I'll look at like TPU, like how TPUs are distributed the next 3 months. And then I'll look at DeepMind for 6 months. That's crazy. There's no way a person that's like jumping from product area to product area, like some people will go to YouTube after that and audit like a random YouTube product for 6 months. You can't know as much as the person that's in that process area. So you just have to have like a really good open line of communication and have a lot of patience for each other, because everyone's just doing their job. And if they're internal, they have the best interest of the business at heart, and you're on the same team. It can just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I reflect back to the whole pen test versus developer, or even pen test versus sysadmin, if we're talking about network pen testing. It is honestly just remembering that we are on the same team. Like, we're not trying to be antagonistic. We're just trying to get the work done.
We will say that at the start of calls sometimes, like, hey, just like laying the groundwork. We are all on the same team. We all have the same goal, and kind of stating what the goal is to remind everyone, like, our goal is securing the product. That's our goal. That's your goal. Our goal is not, to gotcha. Yeah, it helps.
For sure. So as I mentioned in your intro, you've given talks at a few B-Sides events. What inspired you to start speaking at conferences? And do you have any advice for folks who want to get involved in cons or public speaking in tech?
Yes. Two things. One, I had a mentor who really pushed it, and I was feeling very timid and trepidatious about it. And then at DEF CON, somebody came up to me and I was talking to them about how they got their role, how they secured their role. Two different people said, oh, speaking. One person said, in cybersecurity, the currency is talks, which I think it does help you get seen. And it implants an idea in somebody's mind that you are somehow knowledgeable, even if you're not. And I had really good advice that I heard from, I think it was Juno. She said when she first started getting into security and like pen testing, she would give talks, and she would not give talks on pen testing. Like, they weren't technical talks. It was just what she knew. And I'm trying to remember the specific example that she gave me, but it was really cool. It was just like an interest of hers, and she kind of combined it with cybersecurity concepts. And then that was how she started getting talks. And that was very encouraging to hear that like I said, had insecurity about lack of technical knowledge. And you hear people at talks too in the audience being like, that was a terrible talk. I didn't enjoy that at all. And you'll hear that at every conference. People are always complaining about the lack of technical talks. And I used to let that intimidate me. And then I was kind of like, okay, there's so many non-technical talks and people are already complaining about it. So what's one more? I can at least make this talk entertaining and fun. Because when I'm at a conference, the things that I like the most is when I'm actually just like having fun. So that was the approach I took with it, was like, I'm just going to see if I can talk about something that's interesting to me and is maybe fun for the people that are in the audience. And that's when I wrote my first couple talks and started giving them. Advice I would give to people is talk about something that you are interested in, and then, this seems silly, but combine two things that may not necessarily go together is like an easy way of making an interesting talk. And I've heard this advice. I have like a speaking mentor at Google as well, and he gives the same advice. It's like, take something you really love, like hiking or D&D or sewing, and combine it with cyber. And then you have a talk. Like, find the similarities and you have a talk. And those are the talks. I've submitted some like really in-depth talks about privacy and like children's privacy online, and those get rejected. But then my like kind of dumb talks get accepted, because it's people want to keep things a little bit light and they want things to be fun. So if you have something that seems fun, it might have a better likelihood of getting accepted. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that as well.
I think so. I always try and come up with fun names for my talks. I think the first talk I ever gave was HackSpaceCon, and it was called SQ Hell. And it was basically that weirdness in the SQL language and implementations of it. And then my second talk was Big Bam Da Boom, which is a kind of a weird sort of reference to The Fifth Element. There are a number of those references throughout the talk. But yeah, I feel like honestly, if you have a good name, that's not the whole thing, but a good name is what people are going to see on the schedule. And that's ultimately what is going to attract people. So it's very important. Obviously, you have to have the content as well, but a name can go far.
Also, have you been cringing every time I say sequel?
Privately, yes. But you're good. It's fine.
I would also encourage people. The first talk I ever gave, it was at a virtual conference, and we all pitched our talks. before people broke out into breakout rooms to attend them. And my talk was on how important it is to be vulnerable in software testing, like vulnerability in software testing. And somebody else said, I'm going to show you how to hack, and I'm going to show you how we hack in the government and all, like, I forget what the specifics were. And there are, I think, 300 attendees to the virtual conference, and 3 people like decided to come to my talk. So the first talk I gave virtually had 3 attendees. Don't let it like hurt your spirit to have very few attendees. I think the next talk I gave was PDX B-sides, and they had me on the main stage, which was very intimidating. And there were like quite a few people there. I can't do an estimate. I don't know. It felt like 200 people because I was on main stage. And then the next talk I gave, it was like that shitty Friday slot, you know? And there were like 20 people in the room, and it was the same talk.
Yeah.
So don't be encouraged by the number of attendees, because regardless of how many attendees I've had at my talk, from like 3 to 200, every time somebody right afterwards said like, I'm so glad I got to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing, because I took XYZ from what you said. So it really doesn't matter how many people attend, and don't let that bring your spirits down once you get accepted, because like there's going to be, if somebody's there, they're there because they want to hear what you have to say, or they'll play on their phone and ignore you.
It's one or the other. I do want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, because I think it's important. It was about people who like say, oh, you know, the talk wasn't technical enough, or what I hear a lot is that talk wasn't like advanced enough. It was too easy. Yeah. It was like too beginner level. And I do hear this a lot from people. And if the talk wasn't, if the abstract or the title didn't really hint at that, I can understand that frustration. If it did, that talk wasn't for you. And that's why I would tell those people, like, cons have a variety of people. They have beginners, they have intermediate, they have expert. Not all talks are for you. And we honestly do need people to be giving beginner level talks, because a lot of newcomers go to cons. And if all your talks are extremely technical, that's just going to terrify them.
Yes.
You need that, like, you know, here's something fun that I discovered in WordPress or something. And it's, you know, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a new thing, right? It's just be, oh, you know, did you know that WordPress does this? Or did you know that this protocol can do this? That's a fine talk, right? Because as long as you learn something, or as long as somebody learns something from a talk, I feel like that's a good talk. And yeah, that's the thing. I want that as an advice for people who go to the talks and complain because it was too easy. Like, it's not for you. Just don't go next time.
Yeah. I met Jack Rhysider at the last DEF CON, and I was talking to him about how Darknet Diaries, which doesn't go in intense technical depth, like other podcasts that go in intense technical depth, he does such good storytelling of building the world of what's happening. And I was talking to him about how it lit a fire in me for cybersecurity. And I think talks can do that as well. You don't necessarily even have to learn something, but if it just gets someone excited and gets them more passionate about it, and maybe they're going to start researching it and implementing things on their own, that's highly valuable too.
Okay, last question, but certainly not least, in fact, a very important one. As a woman who entered this field from a non-traditional path, did you encounter any particular biases or challenges because of your gender? And what improvements have you seen, or do you hope to see, for women in cybersecurity?
Yes, it's a tricky question. And I have been warned multiple times to be cautious about how I speak about it. And it's a warning coming from a place of care, but it still hurts to hear someone kind of warn you and say, oh, be careful how you discuss that, or be careful how you approach that. So it is intimidating. Like, I think especially the first conference talk, or not the first conference talk, but when I got back into speaking and was speaking at like PDX B-sides, it was a room full of men with like maybe 5 women in the audience. And I had a good bit of fear in that moment, just because as a woman, you've probably heard a lot of men speak down, especially online. Like the internet kind of sucks, but like you heard men talk down about women. And so that's in the back of my mind thinking like, oh my goodness, there's no way these people want to hear from me right now. So I was in my head before I gave the talk. And then I remembered it's not my fault. The conference put me here. I just submitted a talk. They're the one putting me on the stage. So they have to sit here and listen to me and be okay with it. Earlier in my career, I definitely had a lot of instances of like microsexism, like crazy dumb stuff like writing letters, because we used to write letters to all like Christmas cards to all of the customers that we had. And I had a male coworker put them on my desk and say, "Will you do this? I think you have much better handwriting than me," which I don't. But if you're a woman, you sometimes get put in that you're good with people role, and then I miss out on a lot of more technical work. So I have to advocate for myself a lot more forcefully and say, no, I want a more technical project. Please don't put me on another people management or like a more relational issue. Like I sometimes do get put in the role of fixing relational issues rather than being able to work on technical problems. So it's definitely like, and I have had issues where like, I got a same promotion as a coworker and he got a pay raise and I got no pay raise. And I had to like confront some people about why did he get a pay raise and I didn't. We have the same promotion and my team is outperforming his. So there have been a lot of like micro things throughout the years. I will say being a woman in more technical roles, the more I lean into the like very technical roles, like when I switched from doing customer service at a tech company to software testing at a tech company, things got a lot easier when I was interacting with the engineers. I've noticed when there's like technical insecurity amongst the men around me, I am second guessed constantly. And I have to, I'm sure you've talked to women about this, but you have to like prove why you have an opinion about something. You can't just have an opinion.
Yep.
You have to prove it. And I remember the first day I was in the engineering department, a product manager asked my opinion on something. And I said, "Oh, it's XYZ." And he said, "Okay, thank you," and walked away. And I was shocked because I always had to prove why my answer was the right answer. And this person just took me at my word and walked away. And it felt so good. And I've seen that too when I'm in more of a business type role talking about something technical. I'm second guessed often. But when I'm interacting directly with engineers, rarely happens. So that's kind of a fascinating, like anytime I've been in a hacker space, I have been like super welcomed. And anytime like I'm in a small technical community that's highly technically competent, I feel very at home and I don't feel any ill will. But it does become a little bit more difficult if it's like a more business type role. And then there are the like obvious negative things. Like I went to DEF CON and I know it's so much better. This year was like the lamp gate, really like lamp pictures.
Oh, Palo Alto, right?
Yeah.
That was RSA, I think, right?
Yeah.
I hope it was. Yeah.
I think so.
God.
But I went this year and it was good. I felt very aware that there weren't very many women there because I felt it like a lot of people were staring at me, not necessarily maliciously, but just like, what are you doing here? And then I also unfortunately had a couple not so great experiences at DEF CON where I had brought a friend with me and within the first 10 minutes of being there, someone hit on her. And then we also left the after parties at like 11 p.m., which isn't that late. That's like right near where they've started. And we were like accosted at the escalators, like someone blocked us from leaving and drunkenly talked to us for a while, put himself in between us in a way that made both of us feel kind of unsafe. And we also were going out to nightclubs in Vegas, and it was unfortunate that the experiences at DEF CON were worse than my experiences at a Vegas nightclub. It seems like those two should be reversed. So I know it's come a very long way. There's still work to do. And I think to your point, it will get better and better the more women that attend. So if you're a woman, please come to DEF CON and find me. I'll share my like contact information, but like find me and we can all hang out and it'll be more fun. But yeah, there's still work to do. Definitely.
Yeah. I hope that at one point there won't be that much work to do. I feel like it's going to unfortunately just be a problem for a while. But yeah, the more women that come to DEF CON, the more normalized it will be. One thing I will say, and this is in no way to excuse any of the things that you just said, DEF CON security, I know for a fact, is extremely cautious about this. And if you do suffer anything like that, and you go and fetch a goon, specifically a security goon, non-security goons will fetch a security goon. They will remove that person from the building. They will likely ban them from DEF CON. Like there is extremely good zero tolerance policy at DEF CON. And again, this is not to defend any action or not even to say like you're wrong for not reporting it or anything like that. I'm just saying, I think they do a lot of good when they're told about it, for sure.
That's something that I'm glad to hear. And I think it may be an experience for more women, but there is a constant fear of retaliation because a lot of times you are punished for reporting. So it's helpful to hear. I'm glad you said that because yes, if that happens to anyone, that's a good point. That's something that should definitely be reported and taken care of immediately. And I'm glad to hear that is the stance that DEF CON takes, which is probably why it's so much better now than it was way back in the day when it was a little bit of a harsher environment.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah, but it's also, as a woman in the world, that's pretty normal. Like those things that happened at DEF CON are pretty normal just like out in the world as well. But I'm glad there is a process to handle the issue so that it can become a safer space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your knowledge and experiences with all of our viewers and listeners. Where can they find you and follow you online?
Yeah, right now, LinkedIn is mostly where I will post. I'm still giving talks. I love going to conferences. So if I'm giving a talk or going to a conference, I'll put it in there. And I'm always happy to chat with anyone, especially people that are kind of like getting into the industry, happy to give advice and encouragement. And then I do want to get into streaming because I'd love to learn more. It's good for me to know what I'm talking about when I'm talking to like security engineers here at Google. So potentially streaming by the time this is up. We'll see if I can get my act together by then.
Awesome. I will put all those links in the video or podcast description. Thank you so much for joining me, Kim.
Of course. Happy to be here and excited to see you at DEF CON.
Yes, absolutely.